Hi everybody, it's Mrs. Dunn. We're starting a unit on conic sections today, and what we're going to do in this specific screencast is talk about the parabola. What I'm hoping you will learn from this screencast is, given the equation of a parabola, I want you to be able to find the vertex, the focus, and the directrix. I also want you to be able to graph the parabola. We're going to be spending a lot of time going back and forth between the graphs and the equations. So what I want to start off with is a brief overview of what these conic sections are. So if you take two right cylinder cones and you stack them on top of each other point to point, the conic sections are the shapes you would get if you intersect those two cones with like a piece of paper, if you could slice the cone. And you will see you can get a parabola, a circle, an ellipse, or a hyperbola. We're going to focus on the parabola today. Let me start off with the definition of a parabola. So a parabola is the set of all points in a plane equidistant from a fixed line called the directrix and a fixed point not on the line called the focus. So a parabola, you've seen this before when we were talking about quadratic functions, but what makes this different today is we're not necessarily going to have functions. For example, this parabola could be facing up, or it could be facing down, it could be facing right, or it could be facing left. So let's look at what our new equations are going to look like. The new equations are dependent on how the parabola is positioned on the x and the y coordinate system. So if a parabola is facing up or it's facing down, we're going to use this equation, which is x squared is equal to 4 times p times y. And p is going to be that distance from the vertex to the focus and the vertex to the directrix. P is positive when the parabola is facing up. P is negative when the parabola is facing down. This example, the parabola is facing up, so P would be positive. When the parabola is facing right, or it could be facing left, we use a y squared equation. The equation is y squared is equal to 4 times p times x. And like before, p is positive when the parabola is facing right. P is negative when the parabola is facing left. That p-value is the distance from the focus to the vertex and the vertex to the directrix. Okay, I also want to give you the equation of the directrix and how to find the coordinates of the focus. So once you find out what P is, the equation for the directrix is going to be y equals P if it's facing down, negative P when it's facing up. And in this example, where the parabola is facing right or left, it's going to be x equals P or x equals negative P, depending on which way it's facing. Okay, let's get started. So let's look at an example. So here's an equation of a parabola. So I want you to find the focus, the vertex, and the directrix of the parabola that is defined as y equals negative 1/12 x squared. And then I want you to graph the parabola. This is not written in the correct form. If I have this written in the correct form, it's going to be x squared equals something or y squared equals something. So to know what to solve for, I notice that the only squared term in this equation is x. So that means I'm going to have to write the equation in the form x squared equals 4py. So I'm going to manipulate the equation, multiplying each side by -12. That's simply to get x squared by itself. I'm going to multiply both sides by -12. When I do that, I get x squared is equal to -12y. Okay, so now we're in the right form. So that means we're looking at this from the definition with the standard form of the equation. So I'm looking at this example, x squared equals 4py. Now, is p positive or negative? Well, since I see a -12 here, p has to be negative. And that means the parabola is opening downward. What is the value of p? P has to be -3 because -3 times 4 is how we get -12. Remember, this 4 is a constant. So 4 times -3 is -12. The vertex for this equation, this parabola, is at 0, 0. Now, how do we find the focus? The focus, remember, is 0, p. Well, p is -3. So the focus is 0, -3. How do we find the directrix? The directrix is y is equal to the opposite of p. Well, p is -3, so the directrix is y equals 3. And with that information, you can draw the graph. Draw the directrix, y equals 3. Draw the focus, which is 0, -3, and then draw your parabola. Okay, let's look at another example. Find the focus, the vertex, and the directrix of the parabola x equals 2y squared, and then graph it. Notice we have a y squared. We're going to get y squared by itself so that we write it in the form y squared equals 4px. To do that, we'll divide both sides by 2. Y squared equals, so if I divide this by 2, I'm going to get y squared equals 1/2 x, or x divided by 2. So we're looking now at the second part of our standard form equation. We have a y squared equation. We need to find out what 4p is. We know that, or actually we know what 4p is. We need to find p. We know since this is positive, 1/2 is positive, we know that the parabola is opening to the right. 4p is equal to 1/2. See, the coefficient of x is 4p. So since the coefficient of x is 1/2, that's what 4p is equal to. So we're going to solve that equation for p by multiplying both sides by 1/4. So p is equal to 1/8. So with p equal to 1/8, we know the vertex is at 0, 0. Remember that the focus is going to be p0. Well, p is 1/8, so the focus is 180. The directrix is x equals the opposite of p. So it's going to be x, it should say x equals -1/8. Okay, let's pause the video and fix that mistake. Let me explain again. So the directrix is x equals the opposite of p. So the directrix is x equals -1/8. And then we draw the graph. Remember, plot that focus first. The focus is 180. The directrix is going to be x equals -1/8. And then you draw your parabola in the middle of that. All right, I know it's a lot of information. Feel free to pause the screencast and go through this again. It all comes from identifying which equation you're going to use. Since this was a y squared, I'm using these definitions. Okay, let's look at a different type of question now. So now I'm going to give you some information and ask you for the equation. So find an equation of a parabola satisfying the given conditions. The vertex is 0, 0, and the focus is 7, 0. Since the vertex is 0, 0, and I know the focus is 7, 0, that's telling me that the parabola has to open to the right. Think about it. The focus is moved along the x-axis to 7, 0. So that's to the right of the vertex, which means it has to be opening to the right. So that means we need an equation that's written in the form y squared equals 4 times px. The problem is I don't know what p is, but I do know what p is. P is 7. I know it's 7 because the vertex is 0, 0, and the focus is 7 units to the right. So that distance is 7. So 7 is my p-value. So the equation is y squared equals 28x. I'm going to stop this screencast because it's getting a little long and pick this up in the next screencast. Okay, good luck. Email me with questions.